Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how a GPON fiber to the home system works in real life.
The three main components in a passive optical network is the optical line terminal, OLT. You then have an optical splitter, which broadcasts the light to all the optical network terminals, ONTs. This is a real-life GPON ONT. This is made by Huawei. It's the Huawei Echo Life ONT. As you can see at the bottom, it has status lights, so power, PON, loss, 4 LAN ports, and then 2 landline ports, so you can plug in a landline telephone. The PON light is for the configuration. So basically, every ONT needs to be configured. I'll explain a little bit about that later. But it needs to be solid green. If it's not solid green, then it hasn't been configured yet. The last light is to indicate if there's a physical break or disconnection in the cable. So if there is no light coming through or there's not enough light coming through, normally it'll be red or flashing red. Now there are 4 LAN ports, but in reality you can only use one of them because only one normally gets configured, and that's normally LAN 1. So here are the ports. So you would normally use LAN 1 unless your service provider has told you otherwise. You should only be using LAN port 1. This model has the ability to plug in normal landline telephones. A lot of the ONTs don't have that, but this one just does. And then you get your normal DC power input. Now at the bottom here, as you can see, but I have covered this over because this does belong to someone. These are all the serial numbers. Now this is very important as we're talking about configuration. With GPON and with all PON networks, the ONT needs to be configured because they're basically 32 to 64 ONTs sitting on a single fiber. So how do we identify them? We do that by using a unique serial number. In the case of the Huawei ONTs, that is the serial number starts with 4857 in South Africa. I don't know if they use different serial numbers in different countries, but that's how you identify it. When if a technician comes out, they will take that serial number and it'll go back to the office, or they'll do it over the phone, and that's how they can pick up and see that this is your line and this is your thing, and then all the parameters, your speed, the service provider you get, all that gets put in then and there. So if you can, actually photograph this. Different ONTs will have different things. They might use the MAC address or something else, but that's how you identify it. And then this is where the fiber goes, and I don't know if you can really see it very well here, but that's where it goes, and you clip it in. This thing can be wall mounted or it can be left loose. Doesn't matter. It's really up to you. GPON networks often use aerial fiber. The cable going into your home from the pole is called the drop cable. It will be connected to the main cable for the street, which will be enclosed in a dome joint. GPON can also be trenched and put underground. Just one thing to emphasize is that all fiber to the home networks are different. No two are the same, even with the same company. You can have 2 suburbs right next to each other, and they will often have a different setup. In fiber optics, wavelengths is the frequency of the light. Fiber optic cables use wavelengths that humans cannot see. GPON uses 1490 nanometer for the download and 1310 for the upload wavelength. Unfortunately, I don't have a splitter to show you, but it's actually very small. I would liken it to a pack of fuses. I was surprised when I first saw one in a dome joint, but it looks like the one I've drawn. There's a single fiber going in and a bunch of fibers coming out the other side. The number of fibers coming out the other side would depend on the split ratios shown below, which goes up to a 1:64 split. The splitter just sends the same light to all the fibers. As a result, it does mean some of the light is lost in the splitting process, which we call losses. The losses are measured in dBs using a power meter. If the losses are too high, you end up with no light, and no light means no data. In GPON, the losses have to be between -13 dB and -29 dB for you to have a working line. There is no in between with fiber. It either works or it doesn't. My ex-boyfriend had an internet connection that would drop repeatedly, especially during the evenings. He kept complaining on Twitter about it. It turned out that the losses on the line were -30 dB. I was amazed that it worked at all. Obviously, in the evenings when people use their internet connections, it would take what little light there was left for the ONT. I told them to call support and get a technician dispatched to fix the high losses. The technicians did sort out the losses and his fiber was working much better. Now we will move on to the optical line terminal. This is the Huawei Smart AX OLT. An OLT will have a chassis that has slots in it for cards which have the fiber ports. This is what the ONT in your home would be connected to. Each card has 16 10 gigabit PON ports which can be upgraded. This OLT can support hundreds if not thousands of users. The cards are the most expensive part of the OLT in comparison to the chassis. In terms of fault finding, unlike active Ethernet, you cannot use a visual fault locator or an OTDR. This is equipment that we use in Fibre to help us troubleshoot. If you plug these devices into a live GPON network, you can burn the cards in the OLT. The final piece of the puzzle is the software used to manage the GPON network. Huawei has software called iManager U2000, which, when I first saw it, has an interface that reminded me of Windows 2000. This is the software used to configure your ONT, using the serial number I told you about. The setup usually takes around 5 minutes. You would put things in like the VLANs or the virtual LANs, which are used for the different ISPs on the network, so each ISP will get its own VLAN. The speed you are supposed to get will be set by both the infrastructure provider, the people who manage the fiber network, and your internet service provider, assuming they're different companies. So that brings us to the end of this video. Hope you found it useful and informative, and I'll see you next time. So bye-bye.